back when NFTs were really popular, we got the idea that we wanted to make our own NFTs themed around the finishing industry so we could use those to help educate people about our industry and then also for internal training purposes. Took a while to come up with all the ideas and get the graphics made, and now NFTs aren't quite as popular. And we realized that the people that would be interested in getting these NFTs or getting these graphics aren't really set up to purchase NFTs quite yet. Maybe someday they will be, but right now, not so much. So we're going to utilize them as social media themes and just put them out on our normal social. It'll be a little different way to learn about the finishing industry, different than what we normally do, where it's me taking a video of something or a first person video of me explaining. It'll be less of me and more of the actual graphics that are pretty unique and hopefully stick in people's mind better. So the first one that we're going to do is just intro into powder coating. It mostly focuses around the spraying powder, around the powder spray booth. So the first guy up here, it's basically about PPE that we use in the spray booth. So we're always going to be wearing a full Tyvek suit. It usually has the elastic bands around your wrists and your feet, so that way powder doesn't get up inside the suit, and then a hood that goes over top of your head to keep the powder out of your hair. We wear a full face respirator in the spray booth. We don't have a supplied air respirators in the spray booth yet. The full face respirator has an inner seal that kind of seals around right here, so it's important to be clean shaven for that. And it also has an outer seal to make sure powder doesn't get in around your eyes. So that's one of the main reasons why we wear a full face respirator in the powder booth and we don't wear one anywhere else, is because we're trying to protect your eyes from getting powder in them, obviously, because that's an irritant. But if you're getting powder in your eyes, then you just can't see. And then when we're in the powder booth, we're also wearing some sort of work boot, and we're just doing that because we're in the manufacturing industry. Anything could fall on your foot at any time. We just want to make sure that your feet are protected. And then one thing that you'll notice with this graphic is he's holding a powder coating spray gun, but he doesn't have any gloves on. And there's a reason for that. The main reason is that the gun needs to be able to ground through the operator. Essentially, if you're wearing a glove that isn't electrically conductive, the gun itself can actually build up a charge because there's no way for it to dissipate any excess charge, essentially. And that can end up shocking the operator. So there are gloves out there that will conduct electricity and you can wear in the powder coating spray booth. We typically don't. From what I've seen in the industry, it's pretty uncommon. Most people just don't wear gloves. So this next one, it's a guy kneeling down by a box of powder. Still has his suit on, but basically we're changing boxes, changing colors throughout the day. And this is a really key point. So if you're in a job shop and you spray a lot of different colors throughout the day, grabbing the wrong box of powder can mean a catastrophe, a lot of rework, a lot of lost time, a lot of frustration across everybody on the shop floor. Here at Kaiser, we have work orders that go with every job, and that tells everybody what we're doing to it and specifically what color we're spraying it. Powder boxes usually have a label that's pretty clear with a color name on it, usually a part number on there, usually some sort of batch number and a box number on there for some traceability of where that powder was manufactured and when. So we're always checking. It's very important to check the name of the color, obviously. So if it's semi-gloss black, you want the name on the box to say semi-gloss black. And then as a double checker, we check the product code, because there could be color descriptions that are very similar, especially when you get into all the different glosses of black. But when you check that code is unique to that specific powder, and that's through across every manufacturer. If you're using a product code, that's always very unique. That's just signifying one powder. So we always have a product code listed on our work order, and then our operators match that to the box, and that's what this guy's doing up here. Okay, so this one is, again, an operator in full PPE, ready to go in the spray booth, but as you can see on this suit, it's a little bit discolored. And so this is to illustrate cross-contamination and what can happen if you're not paying attention. So let's just say you weren't wearing a suit at all and you were spraying powder all day long and you're at a job shop, you're spraying multiple colors. Well, as the day goes on, you're getting more and more colors on yourself, on your clothes, and if it's a hot day out, you're sweating, they're getting stuck to your skin. So if you were spraying red in the morning and then you're spraying white in the afternoon, if you have red all over yourself, some of that's going to fall off while you're spraying white, and you're going to have red specks in your white powder coated parts. So if you're wearing a spray suit, that helps keep the powder off of you. But then it's important to either clean your suit off really well before you switch to the next color, or grab a new suit when you switch to the next color. Okay, so this is an operator here, has his hood down, still got his respirator on, holding a flashlight in his hand. Once we get done spraying parts in the powder booth, we don't immediately just pull them out and move them into the oven. The one benefit, or one of the benefits of powder, is that we can look a part over before we cure it, and we can fix a lot of issues if they're there. So what this is showing is essentially what operators look like at Kaeser when we are QCing parts pre-cure. So typically still have our respirator on. Hoods usually just flip down because it's so hot, or just trying to cool off. Really not spraying much powder at this point in time. Still have the spray suit on because we're just in between carts. There's no need to take the full suit off. But holding the flashlight, very common. Typically lights are off in the booth. We're really close on parts, using that high-powered flashlight from all different angles, trying to see if there's any light spots. After you have experience with powder, you can kind of just look at it and tell if it's light or heavy. If it's really light, you can just see right through to the substrate with the high-powered flashlight. If there is a lot of excess buildup of powder, you can blow that off with an air blower, or with your mouth. At that point, you'd have to pull your respirator off. But there's very, very little powder floating in the booth at that time, and you're just using air from your mouth to just blow off little tiny bits of powder where it's excessively built. And we're doing that to make the finished product look better. If you skip that step, you're really just missing out on an opportunity to put out a good quality product. Because if you're not looking parts over before they cure, you're going to see the bad stuff after it cures out, and then you got to rework it. But you can catch a lot of the bad looking areas before it's cured and just fix them right there in the booth. Blow some powder off if you have to add some powder, whatever you need to do. And then you can have a good looking product when it comes out of the cure oven. Okay, so this is another one right here. So in full PPE, he's holding an air blower, pretty large air blower, but holding an air blower. So like I just said, when we're looking over parts with a flashlight, if there are areas that are too heavy, you can grab an air blower and blow them off with air. Typically, you're going to want really low air pressure, right? Because it's not cured out. The powder's still just clinging to the part with electrostatics. If you just bring in a full air blast, you're going to blow off a lot of powder and cause a bigger problem. So you want to be able to adjust your airflow, or utilize an air blower that's rather tiny. This one's really large, but maybe something that's a little bit smaller. So that way you can kind of control and just get a little bit of air movement, because you're not trying to blow all the powder off. You're just trying to blow some excess off where there's extra build. Okay, so this one is a operator in a powder suit, no respirator. He's got oven gloves on. So there are times when our operators are moving carts in and out of the oven. Typically, we try to not have our sprayers doing that, but when we're short-staffed, which seems to be more likely than not lately, that's when an operator that is spraying powder, if the oven is open, meaning there's nothing in there curing, and they're done spraying a cart, they're typically going to pull a cart into the powder oven, the cure oven. Extremely important that we're wearing gloves when we do that. Even though that the cart is cool itself, the oven is up at full temperature. If you trip in the oven and fall, put your hand out up against the side of the oven, you're instantly going to burn it. Okay, so anytime you're going into the oven, always need to have some sort of high temperature glove on that's going to protect you from the heat and isn't going to melt when it touches something hot. You don't want it to melt to the side of the oven. You don't want it to melt to your hand. Make sure that you have really good high quality gloves that can handle heat. Like a welding glove is a really good place to start for something like that. Another thing, when we're getting ready to pull parts into the oven, or just before, we're checking the TDS of the powder. What is that? The technical data sheet of the powder. Every powder has one. You can ask your sales rep or powder supplier for that. There's a lot of stuff it tells you, but one of the main things is it tells you the time and the temperature that the powder needs to be cured at. I understand that it's not necessarily realistic every time you're getting ready to pull a carton to the oven for somebody to go pull out a paper TDS or go look it up on the computer. I get that. What we do at Kaeser is we mark on all of our boxes, if it's not already on there from the manufacturer, what the time and temperature is to cure out the powder. Where do we get that information? The TDS, the technical data sheet. So when we get boxes of powder received in that we've ordered, we look at the data sheet and then we write the time and temperature on the box. And then when an operator is getting ready to pull parts into the oven, they can adjust the temperature of the oven and set the timer accordingly. So that way we are curing powder at the right temperature in the right amount of time. If you are too low a temperature or too short a time, so it's just not in the oven long enough, not getting hot enough, so it's not going to be fully cured. And so you're not going to get all the best properties of the powder at that point in time, meaning it might look like a good finish, but if it's not fully cured, it's probably not going to be as chemical resistant. It's not going to hold up as well to dings and chips, and the surface might mar or discolor if you're not fully cured over time. If you're over cured or over baked, that can result in some bad instances. If it's a light color, could change the color of the powder if you're in there for way too long or just too high of temperature. It also could make the coating really brittle, so it loses some flexibility possibly if you're over baked. So knowing the time and temperature that you need to be in the oven is really important. One thing to note, temperature, it's absolute. You just set the same temperature. The time on those technical data sheets, the powder coating companies are telling you that is the amount of time that the metal part needs to be at temperature. It's very common for powders to be 10 minutes at 400 degrees. That doesn't mean that you just put it in the oven for only 10 minutes. You've got to leave the part in there till it can get up to 400 degrees or near 400 degrees. Then start your 10 minutes. Okay, so you have to know roughly how thick your parts are and how long they're going to take to heat up, what type of metal substrate they are. If it's just a common steel part, you're probably going to need to be in there for 15 or 20 minutes to get it up to temperature, and then 10 minutes to actually get the curing process to cure out fully. This one right here, we're talking about safety here and staying safe and staying hydrated. That's really important in powder coating. You can tell he's got his suit open, he's sweating a lot. That happens during the summer when we're spraying powder. There's really no way to avoid it. A lot of manufacturing facilities, most of them are going to be hot. Even if they're attempting to do some sort of climate control, it's always just really hot in the summer, especially if you're dealing with some sort of coating process where you have to have ovens in the facility. And so in this particular case, we're just showing that, like, hey, you need to stay safe. It's going to be hot certain times of the year. And on those times of the year, it's really important to make sure that you're drinking plenty of water and making sure that the areas that you're taking breaks in is air conditioned to help cool your body temperature back down, and making sure you're taking breaks at regular intervals to make sure that you're staying cool. We're a small business. We understand that, you can't take breaks constantly because we got to be able to get stuff done. We don't have a huge staff, but when it's those really, really hot days in the middle of summer, it's really important to make sure we stay on top of hydration. We stay on top of keeping people cool. You're better off taking multiple breaks throughout the day and keeping people safe and fresh, so that way day in and day out we can keep doing it and not overheat ourselves and then not be able to work for a couple days because of the effects from that.